Today, I'm sitting down with someone I've followed for a long time, Dr. Tom Field. He's the guy behind the Engler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program up in Nebraska. But more than that, he's someone who's been helping young people not just build businesses, but build purposeful lives. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. It's absolute joy to be with you, and appreciate the opportunity to learn from you as we talk today.
I'm sure our listeners are gonna be in for a treat. There's no telling where this conversation may lead us, but you often say that the start is the hardest. I want to talk a little bit about that. What is the power of the start? Could you explain a little bit more about that?
It's amazing to me how our internal voice is oftentimes our greatest barrier. And in an age where it's pretty hard to do anything quietly and privately anymore, because social media and everything's just so out in the public. So a young person, or an old person for that matter, or anybody in between that's thinking about, man, I could start a company. I'm going to try an innovation. I'm going to take that step. If there's doubt in them, and there's fear of comparison, and there's fear of being ostracized for giving it a try and then having it not work out, or having to pivot, those things just get in our head. And you can imagine, being at a NASCAR race, and they're getting ready to start that race, and the front row drivers are like, I don't think I want to start.
That's true.
That's a wreck. And
Yeah.
I think the challenge is it's that first step. I've got a lot of friends in the kind of outdoor recreation, adventure, climbing, skiing world, et cetera, based on where I grew up. All my friends that are really good climbers, a couple of them that have been on some really big mountains, all talk about, you stand at the bottom of that mountain, and the hardest step's the first one, because you're like, man, once I step, I'm committed.
Yeah.
And we look at that and we think, man, how do I even get started? Well, the key is take a step. You don't got to take 20 steps, just take one.
I 100% agree. Like, I think that first step, but don't you feel like, I almost feel like we all look at every decision with some finality to it. And the reason, a lot of people ask me, like, why did you go down your entrepreneurial road? And, how do you build something from scratch? And my wife and I are a lot different. By trade, she's a pharmacist. And so, it's very black and white, very much a straight line direction. And like I told her, when we got started, I said, stop looking at everything with finality in every decision that you make. The beauty about entrepreneurship is we can deviate. If we need to move left and right to make the trip a little bit easier before we go straight line up the mountain, like, we have that ability to do that.
Absolutely right. I haven't found really what I would consider a sustainable entrepreneurial journey that was a straight line. Everybody we meet that's gone down this path, whether it was Paul Engler or whoever, it's this sort of twisting, convoluted path, and lots of like kind of false starts where you get up and you get, oh man, I'm in the cul-de-sac. I don't know what to do here. Well, you got to turn around, get out of the cul-de-sac, and take a different road. You went left the first time, go right this time.
Yeah.
And I think, and it's hard for people because we are trained by the educational system. We have to get the right answer, and we get rewarded if we have the right answer. And in entrepreneurship, it's like, what question should I be asking right now in the midst of my grief, pain, and anxiety?
And sometimes as you're in that discovery phase, like, I don't know what right questions I need to be asking, but like, let's just stumble our way through it. And I tease our team sometimes. I said, like, we're in the Gulf of Mexico right now. We've got the shell of the boat built, and we're on our way to the Atlantic. And there's going to be some turmoil. There's going to be some waves, but we're going to get this thing built by the time we get to the hurricane. And we're going to be able to sail right through it. It is interesting that you brought like our education system. It very much, I think, kind of thwarts us from that creativity, because we do have to have everything figured out. I find that, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you brought that up, because to me, that's a big deal. I struggle with my daughter. She's very much a by the book and by the rules. Like, she's a great student. A student, does everything. All the teachers love her. And like I told her, I was like, if you want to own a business at some point, think outside the box a little bit. And it's not all going to be laid out. You got to do X, Y, and Z, and, just connect the dots. It doesn't always work that way.
We get caught in the comfort of the answer, right? And Mark Twain wrote, it's not what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're caught up in a way of learning that it's like, these are absolute answers, doesn't really prepare us very well for what the reality, and whether you're an entrepreneur or not, just the reality of the markets, the reality of communities, the reality of economies, the reality of weather, et cetera, et cetera. We're always going to be introduced to a new set of circumstances that take the rules we had and we sort of have to throw them out. One of my favorite books is Todd Bolsinger's book, Canoeing the Mountains, which is really a story about organization and adaptation in churches, but it's actually about business. And they take the Lewis and Clark journey, and it's just the perfect analogy for me as an entrepreneurial thinker is that, yeah, Lewis and Clark, Jefferson, he prepped them. They were ready. They had as good a technology and resourcing as they could have had, but the direction was pretty much, look, kind of go north, and at some point you're going to take a real hard left, and I hope there's water all the way to the Pacific. And if you guys could find that, that'd be awesome.
That is the truth. We talk about a lot of folks have dreams of entrepreneurship. What's one thing that you see that gets in the way of most folks starting something new, and especially in the rural space?
I think there's probably a couple, but the one that gets in the way that is really surprising, but then when you think about it, maybe not so much, but it's the fear that you're going to be ostracized for trying something new in a community that truly values stability.
Sure.
And this is not an indictment of rural communities. I love rural communities. We choose to live in a rural community. I will live in a rural community the rest of my life because I love that space. But I grew up in rural Colorado in the mountains, right? Protected on all sides by big mountains. So we were siloed up really well.
Sure.
And what got in our way more often than not was just anything that would invite change. So I think that's the biggest challenge, right? Is just getting past that notion that we like things either the way they are or the way they were. And in fact, if we look back, all communities, all industries were ultimately built by people who tried something new.
I get asked this question all the time. It's like, hey, I want to start a business. Inevitably, it's a young person that I'm visiting with that, like, they want to start a business, but they don't know what it is. And, and they're asking me, and I'm just trying to get them in that thought process of like, I don't know what your passion is, but find something and solve a problem. And I know it's as simple as that, but it's hard to walk someone down that journey. Do you find in working with the students that you do with these young people, I mean, what does it look like for those students? I mean, by the time they get to work with you, do they have an idea already, or are you trying to facilitate that and help them through that journey of finding that thing, whatever it may be?
They're across the spectrum. I mean, we will get freshmen who are already running, many would might consider a side hustle, but they're enterprises that might be generating 20, 30, 40,000 a year in gross revenue. It's not profit yet, but gross revenue. That's pretty impressive. That kid doesn't need to be convinced that entrepreneurship might be a good idea, right? We also get young people in who are like, I've got this, I just have this gnawing feeling that I need to be thinking about what I might be able to build, but I don't know what it is. And we get other students who will come in and they'll say, I just know that there's something about watching my dad or my mom or my grandparents or my aunts and uncles or some person in my community who was running their own enterprise, that there was something in them that was super attractive. And I don't know how to get that. Mm-hmm. So we get the full spectrum. And our approach to it is exactly your point. find one of two things: find a problem to fall in love with or a customer base to fall in love with. The solution will come, and don't get carried away with being exotic. Two of our most successful companies, one of them is called Stala Services, and Grant and Aaron, one of the most beautiful young couples you'll ever meet, doing really, really well. They are in the premium porta potty business.
I love it.
And as Grant says, you could not have found a less sexy business to be in than this.
I love it. I
Right?
love it.
And the other one is a guy that figured out, especially in construction, ag, other, sort of heavy equipment kind of industries, taking semi trucks, refurbishing them, and he pulls a lot of stuff out of California and other places where just the regulations will drive trucks out of service because they can't meet some emission standard. He buys them up, refurbishes them, and then resells them, and has built an incredible business. And again, it's not high tech. It's an unbelievably successful business because he found both a problem and a customer base, and he was able to marry those things. And so we don't have to, and when we talk about passion here, kind of two ways. One, our purpose usually has some passion in it. That reason why we were born. That gets revealed, I think, like an onion sometimes, like God's peeling those layers back and showing us why we were built so uniquely and the gift we have to offer. So that's part of passion. But the other thing is passion's also a decision. I would guess that given you're growing up, I grew up on a ranch in western Colorado, and as a kid, we were heavy livestock-based deal and horses and cattle, and we had a big barn. And you can imagine who was the barn cleaning engineering team. It was my two brothers and I, right from the time we were pretty young. You had two choices. You could clean those stalls with no passion and then do it again.
Sure. Yeah.
And again until Dad was happy. Or you could choose to bring some passion to it and get good at it. I look back now, people say like, well, what are you going to do next? I said, well, there's always barn cleaning.
Yeah. I find it interesting, talking about passion too. I try to let a lot of our farmers and ranchers that are in our program that we work with, like they have a specific skill set. I mean, they are great at managing, and they're also great at managing adversity, which I think are two qualities that you could put into any industry other than agriculture, and they would get paid a lot more money. It has been interesting to try to help them identify ways. And like you said, the non-sexy business of the porta potties, finding simple stuff like that creates cash flow and creates, like, sometimes taking the pressure off, I feel like allows the creative juices flowing, because I think we all feel like we've got to create that thing. And one thing that I've learned, and I'll be 42 on the 25th of September, but in my time, I always felt like I had to find that one thing that was special that could, really set it apart. But the truth is startups, true startup with a new concept, those are really, really hard. They're really a few and far between. And to realize how hard that process is, rather than like starting a business, starting a service base, or, whatever the case may be. Like, it's difficult, don't get me wrong, but sometimes don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, and the great thing we know about people who are in the trades and the services, we know for sure that the niches they're filling oftentimes have more sustainability over time, than the new trick, the new app, the new software package, et cetera, which, are prone to pretty rapid iteration. It's funny. The world, kind of tells us get big. If you're not hitting home runs, you're not a very good baseball player. Well, when we started this little adventure at the University of Nebraska, right before I came out here from, leaving my lifelong time in Colorado to come out here to do this, by chance, because we were too late getting to watch a movie we wanted to go see. But Moneyball was on. I thought, well, this will be all right. So we went in and watched Moneyball, and about 10 minutes into that film, I'm like, I'm supposed to see this. This is about base hits. and getting, it doesn't matter, get on base, just get on base. And when we came here, that was we said, if we create a big company that's super successful, that would be really cool. That's not our goal. Our goal is lots and lots of base hits. We decided right off the bat, if you're a one-person company and you're self-employed and your life's filled with joy and you're adding value to your family and your community, that's a home run. That's great. We want that. And if you're a 5-person company, we love you equally. And if you're a 30-person company, we're going to love and support you. And if you're a 1,000-person company, we're just going to pray for you.
Yeah, exactly. That's the truth.
Because you're going to have a really hard job. And it's so easy just to say, oh, if you're not Google-like. I think about, Paul Engler. I was so fortunate to spend time with him over the 13 years that we really were building this program. And, Paul would talk about, students would ask him, who are the most successful people you know?
Mm-hmm.
And he wouldn't talk about the captains of industry. He would talk about men and women who had worked for Cactus and had gone on and built side gigs or built other businesses and had these great families. And he would say, that's success.
Sure.
That's what the right thing looks like. And, I think it's pretty easy to get caught up in, the grand thing, but oftentimes it's the simple thing that might just lead us to the joy we're looking for.
You never know who you're going to meet. And I was at a luncheon in Fort Worth and I was visiting with an individual, and come to find out they had sold an HVAC company for $100 million. You would not know if you were to go to church with them and sit at the same pew. You wouldn't be able to tell that that's what they've done. And so I do think it's interesting because Cody Sanchez, in her book, she focuses on Main Street millionaires. And I think it's interesting when we start to look at what success looks like. Sometimes it's the simple stuff. If you can just replicate it and build it and you're a true manager, you can get things there.
Oh, absolutely. And lead and have an impact on people in ways that really are a magnification of the wealth you're creating, right? Not only, and certainly we are a very profit-driven, profit-thinking organization here, but
Sure.
we think all the time about, like, what's your impact and what's your legacy? What will that be? And what are the lessons and the culture, the values, the virtues you're going to pass on to the next generation? What do you want that to be? And who do you want to model your life after? And that's what's exciting is when you recognize that when you make that choice, take where you're planted, because you can lead from anywhere. And it can be built today from anywhere. And that's what's exciting is, to see what some might say these are ordinary men and women. But what I believe is they're extraordinarily purposeful people who have found ordinary environments in which to shine.
Absolutely. You brought up legacy, and how do we get the next generation, to see entrepreneurship as a tool and not a threat? And how does that correlate with some of these family operations?
One of the things that when we first started out, we kind of got caught up in our job was to start companies. And as a staff, we were like focused in on business starts. And that was where we were a little focused. And early on, it was probably not the wrong move. Then we figured out, look, we got X amount of time and also X amount of expertise. We are limited in our capacity to actually coach across the wide spectrum of businesses that were showing up. So we said, hey, our purpose, ultimately, yes, we want businesses built. What we want to do is we want to build people. And if we build people and those people build businesses and those folks building those businesses also believe that they can build community, they will create sustainable, legacy-driven enterprises. And yeah, if somebody sells a business, great. That's exciting. Good for you. And we hope you go start another one. But our goal was never to build them, that sort of turn and burn kind of approach. And when we did that, it was it's amazing the kind of person that's been attracted to our program. I cannot tell you, I wake up every day and I'm like, I cannot believe how blessed and fortunate I am to work with this cadre of people. They are highly motivated. They have the right combination of humility and hunger, and they are thinking legacy not in terms of being grand themselves, but legacy in terms of, what kind of impact can I have? And as they look at family businesses, I tell them all the time, look, if you're thinking family business, here's the first mantra, and I make them say it out loud. My family does not owe me a job. If we think we're owed something, we're going to underperform. We just are, right? You can see it in every walk of life. In sports, right? Some gets on the field because they were owed. They usually don't perform that well. If they earned it, they usually do something spectacular. So we work really hard in that space to just keep thinking about, if you're going to go back to the family business, what am I going to do to earn the opportunity, and what can I bring to this business that might be adding to what it already does, but maybe what am I going to bring that we can snap on to the outside of this to diversify it? And even something as simple as saying, look, I'm bringing a spouse with me, and he or she is an attorney, a CPA, a nurse, a chiropractor, whatever it is that they are, it doesn't matter, right? A mechanic, a teacher, whatever. What can we do as a family business to invest in that new business that might, support that daughter-in-law, son-in-law, that then gives that branch of the family another pillar under their economic foundation? That's good investment, right? And if it's real estate or, equipment or, infrastructure, whatever, that then can be repaid back to the family business. And over time, we do that smartly enough, we can create, an empire, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
We can.
That's one of the hardest things, I think, in dealing with like all of our clients that we've worked with all over the country, is the family dynamic. And I'll tell you, the ones that I see, whether it's a farm and ranch, maybe the farm and the ranch is a base, because 2 generations, maybe they started it, and they did what they could to get it to the next level. And then what I think is interesting is in the phases of entrepreneurship and starting a business, you start out and you're just a scrapper. There's nothing to manage because maybe it's you. And your thoughts, your trial and error, the mistakes that you've made, you live with that. And then that next generation comes in, and their journey in that business could be totally different, because they're actually managing, we're building teams, the scale is evolving as we're continuing to grow. And then, like you said, you bring a wife into the mix that maybe has a specific skill set. The really successful families have taken what you just said, and it's like, hey, we're, as a family collective unit, like, we've got $10 million in assets, and we can help you get your business off and running. And they're setting this person up. Well, then the next one that comes into the family, and all of a sudden you look at this mushroom and you've got a family unit that are all being able to chase their dreams, chase their passions, and the family's helping to fund that. They're helping to finance it. They're helping to get that infrastructure. And I'm telling you, like, you want to talk about some of the family empires that I have worked with across this country, that is the change that I've seen that separates them from everybody else.
Absolutely correct. And it's all about, and I think about founders. The biggest challenge for founders, especially if it's a company that is going to be a legacy or a family-based enterprise, at some stage you have to then come to grips also with the reality that there is going to be a different way to do what you do. You can either be, and I can't remember which family business consultant I heard this from, but they said, look, you get to be the senior generation. You are going to be one of 2 things. You're either going to be a builder of the next generation or a tyrant. And he said, there's not much in the middle. He said, there's not many who are kind of a tyrant and kind of a builder. You either hang on for so long and with such determination that it has to be my way, that it ultimately that kills a business. But the ones that make it are the ones that say, all right, here's our core. We are clear about our core. We are clear about our core values. We are clear about our mission. But God, there's a lot of ways up that mountain. And I think that's the thing that the families that really have thought into the future, they're able to see that. And they recognize, look, we've got a core, and that core is important. It's important to the company. But there's a lot of ways to leverage it. And I think that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, the chance to step back from something and say, well, what if we did it? What if? And what if is an awfully powerful question, I think, for any of us in any of the things that we're trying to do.
At Empire Ag, we're not at the stage of, like, my kids aren't coming into the business, yet. They're still young. I think one of the biggest shifts for me was bringing in actually setting up that leadership channel. As we have grown more members of the team, it's come with its own challenges, trying to help people see the big vision and able to chase that and create it and make it their own. Worst things like I do not want to hear is, well, this is your business. You own it. Well, that is correct, but I want you to own it. I want you to feel and understand why we're doing what we're doing. And that way, when those decisions are made, I've hired you. I've entrusted you with our customer base, with our marketing, with everything. Like, I want us to build this together. I think that has been one of the biggest shifts in our business is as you add more team members, being able to keep that environment where your employees understand and see the vision, and where you're wanting to head.
And it's so critical. The culture of, we have a concept we call, and we didn't come up with this. We borrowed it from the All Blacks rugby team, but it's sweep the shed. When our program started, we were in a really old building and everybody else was leaving it. And we just kept, eventually facilities said, look, we're going to tear this down at some point. So we just said, okay, we understand that. So can we do whatever we want inside this building? You guys take care of electric, plumbing, HVAC. We'll do all the painting, all the other stuff. And they're like, yeah, that'd be great. So it was a startup deal. We painted walls. We did all kinds of stuff to make it work. And as we were doing that, students started to have a deep sense of ownership in our program and in that space. So then along comes the time, finally, they're like, okay, we are going to tear this building down. And there was a renovation of a library on East Campus here that gave us an absolutely beautiful space. We were hesitant as a community, literally hesitant to leave the old building. There was deep concern that we would lose the sense of ownership. So when we came to the new space, we've been reading a book called Legacy, and you may have seen that by James Kerr, which is what the All Blacks can teach us about business. And it's a great story about 13 fundamentals of culture. And one of their culture pieces is sweep the shed, which is played out in the All Black world. This is the best rugby team in the world. Over time, no professional team has achieved the level of sustained excellence that the New Zealand All Blacks have attained. It's a phenomenal organization. At the end of a match, home or away, after the reporters have left, after all the hoopla's gone, the All Blacks clean the locker room.
I love it.
The All Blacks then load the equipment truck. And it's their sweep the shed mentality, never be too big to do the small things. So if you can build that into an organization, and what's funny, and you think, man, is any of this sticking, right? Sometimes, in our space, we're like, man, we think we're trying to model the right, is it sticking? I got this great email this morning. I was overjoyed. One of our most recent grads who is working in an organization, he's building this really cool side business, but he knows he's got to make some money at the same time.
Sure.
So he's in this organization. And he sent me a note this morning. He said, could you send me as many things as you've got about the sweep the shed mentality? He said, you ought to see our break room. It's a disaster. And he said, nobody's doing anything about it. I think I just got to bring sweep the shed mentality to this organization. And I forwarded it to all our staff. I said, guys, you're doing great. Keep it up. They're hearing you. They're hearing you. They're hearing you. And it was so cool, right? Because here's, he's been on that job for 2 months and he's already saying, look, we can do better than this.
Absolutely.
And so he's living it. And whether he stays with them or not doesn't matter. He gets it. And he will ultimately build an extraordinary organization because he gets the culture, because he understands what it means to be an owner. I'll be honest. I think we look at all of this, frankly, all of the social challenges facing this country.
Yep.
It's because people are behaving like renters.
100% agree with you.
And when you have pride of ownership, you behave differently.
You do.
And you bear some things that are hard because you made a promise to take care of people, right? I think our whole country could stand a little sweep the shed.
In all facets of life, I think that mentality goes a long ways. And I know I've worked for some places that you did not have that sweep the shed mentality at all. And I think it tears down the culture. I think it tears down the hierarchy that's within that company and creates the ones on the bottom that they're sweeping the shed. They just feel like they're not having an impact.
Yep. And it's honoring people at every level, right? That's the other thing that we've tried really hard to help the next generation of founders coming out of this program understand is don't ever look beyond the capacity of any person on your team. If you've got a custodian, a janitor, you better get to know that person because that person is key. That person may be the person who finds the problem that if it gets solved today will save you $1 million because it didn't break.
Yep.
That's the person. You'd better be chatting with them and you better know their story and you better care about their family. Because if you do that, they're going to help you. And over time, you'll help them grow as well, which I think is ultimately the purpose of what we're doing.
I totally agree. I mean, I think we're in the people business, and whether it's our clients or our employees, we're in the people business. And I feel like God put us here to build each other up. And I think sometimes that's hard for folks with their preconceived notions of what they think business and being the boss looks like. I think that is something that we have to shape and some of that comes back to moral fiber, the way you were raised. I mean, there's a lot of factors in that, but exposing these young people like you guys are doing, I love what your team is putting together. It's needed.
Well, and when you really implement it, it's funny. They will take you seriously. So we have an advisory board, but then I also have what's called an exec team. The exec team is a group of students that serve as an advisory board specifically to me as the director.
Okay.
And I meet with them every week.
Yep.
They're elected by their peers. And so about year 2, one day, I told them, the reason we're doing this is we're going to create a sense of ownership around here.
Sure.
And so I had made a decision, and looking back, I don't even remember what it was, but they didn't like it. They were unhappy with the choice I had made. It was late Friday afternoon. I get this phone call from one of them, and he said, we need you to be at such and such a coffee shop Sunday night at 6. We need to have a chat. Our team and you, we need to have a chat. And they hung up, right? And I could tell the kid was a little bit nervous, but like, I'm going to do this. And immediately I'm like, okay, they're unhappy about something. This is awesome. They just took the first step.
Yeah.
They're calling me out.
I love it.
Right.
I love it.
And so I showed up at this place. I'm walking in and I've got this and they're all looking really serious, like they are prepared to eat my lunch.
Sure.
And I've got this big smile on my face. And one of them says, what are you so happy about? I said, I'm about to watch you guys become owners. You're gonna ream me, aren't you? And they're like, yeah. I said, good. It's working. And they were so disappointed though, because I didn't walk in, terrified.
Yeah.
But I was so happy because they had done what we'd hoped. They'd actually said, and it was very respectful. They're doing it as professional. It was very professional. I want to make sure that's clear, right? But they had said, we are an advisory board and we are going to hold you to account. And it was great.
Well, and
So
I
when
think
you
that,
build that culture, be careful because they'll take it seriously.
but for those students going through that and seeing that, you just impacted them not only in business, but in their community. Because those are the same individuals that are going to sit on a board. And I tell you, one of the things we talk about is, the change within the country is we have a lot of people sitting on boards that they're just placeholders. I have always urged that if you're going to sit on a board, be an active member, be engaging, help bring it to the next level, or get off the board. So that has impacts beyond just entrepreneurism. That's community foundation building that you guys are putting together.
Yeah, I appreciate your thought on that. It's this place, and I think education has struggled with this. I was fortunate to grow up in a community that there was deep commitment, a lot of ties, there was high expectations, but also a lot of support. But there was a standard, right? There were standard bearers, and you were aware of that. And it wasn't ever done to make you feel small. It was always like, hey, you're capable. And it
Yep.
was across the board. There were no exceptions to this. Everybody was expected, like, aspire to something great.
Sure.
Over time, we got caught up in, oh, well, what if somebody doesn't meet the standard? And so and frankly, and I want to be careful because I think there's still so much power in great education, but we got caught up in kind of the participation certificate thing.
Yep.
And that went too far. Then we got caught up in don't have high expectations, don't seek excellence, and heaven forbid, stay where it's safe. So multiple choice tests. History is about dates, not about ideas. And math is about solutions, not problems. And English is about what somebody else wrote, not about what you're capable of writing. And over time, what we did is we divorced personal and professional development, and we left personal development out of it because it was too risky. And in professional development, we said, look, because we don't want to get sued or we don't want to take heat, we'll just agree to test to that which is the most easy to defend. Like, we know that July 4th, 1776, that was the day they signed the Declaration. Okay, great. That's an easy one. It's defensible. And we just divorced it all. What we said was, I'll tell you where it all came from is a question I was asked when I was at a former institution. We had recruited this young guy. He was a great young man, has gone on to do really great stuff. And I knew his dad. And as we walked out of the recruiting session, his dad turned to me and he said, are you going to turn him into an employee or an employer? Now, Steve Radokovich from Earlham, Iowa.
Yep.
And I could not answer. I wanted to answer the question. But when I went to answer it from a place of integrity, I'm like, darn, our system is not really built to produce employers. And there's nothing wrong with being an employee. Understand that you can be an entrepreneur as an employee.
Yeah.
But what I came out of that was, we're just producing number 2 dent corn.
Absolutely.
We are not allowing these young people to be who they were meant to be. We haven't engaged them in the process of what would it look like to be an employer? How hard would that be? And embracing how hard it would be. And so I actually left the university because I couldn't answer that question. And no, wasn't that I was mad at the university necessarily. I just
Sure.
I don't know how to do that here. Went out into another space for about 5 years, and when I got the chance to come here, the thing that got me to come eventually was like, we've got to answer that question.
I love exactly. In a sea of sameness, stand out. And I think our system, one of the things I did want to talk about is what role does failure play in all this? And I feel like we're in that system, we've almost taken and pulled out the acceptance that failure is okay. Failure is a learning. I always tease everybody. I'm like, my education at A&M was not free, and neither is failure. And so we got to take everything that happens, good or bad, learn from it, make adjustments. And are we going to have some embarrassment because we failed? Possibly. I don't look at it that way. I just feel like we need to deviate from whatever direction we're headed. We want to strengthen rural America and bring back these small towns that we see kind of drying up in the plains. Exactly what you were saying right there was creating those employers. And it can be something simple. It could be the tire shop. It could be the laundromat. It can be every little thing around the convenience store. It doesn't have to be something crazy to do well and to prosper and to build your community up.
Absolutely right. And the whole space of failure, when we got started in this, we tried really hard not to copy another program because we thought, okay, we got to build this for Nebraska, for the culture of this state, with the full realization this is a very blue collar state. I mean,
Yeah.
tradesmen, hardworking, work with your hands, build things. That's what Nebraskans have done for a long time. And so we started looking at, innovation over time, and nobody got it right on the first try. No one, even in the tech world, right? You look at the first version of most software, they were rudimentary and not too cool. They were pretty ordinary. In places like Nebraska, the heartland, we don't like to admit that we messed up. We kind of believe the Vince Lombardi thing, right?
Yep.
And we said, wait a minute, let's step back from that and let's say, fail forward, fail fast, fail cheap. And then a student came and said, and we need to add another little phrase at the end of that. And he said, it needs to be learn like crazy. And so we actually hope that students have some failures. And we're not talking about epic. We're not talking about epic
Yeah,
failures. We're talking about like mistakes where we
absolutely.
can coach them through that and say, what did you learn, right? Conor McGregor, the fighter, he says, I either win or I learn. I get knocked out, I better have learned something from that fight because, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a failure and it's embarrassing and I hated to lose, but what can I learn from it? That's a hard thing to break through with students because comparison and social media have made failure, people beat each other up. And
sure.
so, we say to them all the time, look, get out of that space, but be public with it here. And we actually have a bell that we ring. And if you have something good happen, you ring the bell, you write it in the book. And if you have a failure, you also ring the bell and you write it in the book and everybody cheers, right? Because we want to celebrate the learning. And so long as you're willing to share it, help others learn from your mistake, then it's a gift. It's a huge gift to the community. And our staff, we try to practice it really clearly with them because I've messed more stuff up than they're in the book long enough to write down all that.
I love that because we do the same thing with men and women that are part of our group. We try to create that environment. It's like, look, go ahead and get it out so that it doesn't tear you down mentally. We can help build you back up. We can help facilitate that growth that's there. I think that is huge for all of us. We've got to have an environment of growth, especially in business. It's a lonely world out there.
My mom's advice when we were kids was learn to laugh at yourself because you're going to do some funny stuff. If you can laugh at yourself and not to tear yourself down, but just like to just recognize, man, that was a goof, people are going to come with you more willingly. And
Yeah.
that is true. There's no doubt about that. If you can have that vulnerability with your team and with the people you're trying to help and support and serve, they will go with you.
Let's talk about work, faith, and hope in the real world. You've said it before that hope isn't a feeling, it's a discipline. What does that look like right now?
Well, I this morning sent a message out to all of our students and alumni after, reflecting on the events of last week, the silencing of a voice on a college campus, a guy that practiced inquiry at a beautiful level. And it wasn't about whether you agree or disagree. It's about, can we live in the disagreement and build something?
Absolutely.
Right. And that's the beauty of what it means to be an American. On the eve of September 11th, that happens. And those are two attacks against all of us and against all of our principles. It doesn't matter what side of it doesn't matter. That was an attack against humanity. I was this crazy combination of angry, in grief, in disbelief, in asking God, why? This
Yeah.
is too much. How do we lead in this? And then over the next 48, 72 hours having some things revealed. What I shared with our group was a message that essentially summarized at the end of tomorrow will be a brighter, better day if we choose to make it that way. But it will take all of us.
I echo that because I felt the same thing when that happened. And you kind of you look back, and it's like one of the founding principles, I mean, was the fact that you and I could disagree. But how do both of us learn if we can't communicate with each other and allow that to help us grow? And it's not you're right, I'm right. It's not that at all. It's one of the founding principles. And I think for business, like, we as humans need to allow that for us to grow.
Absolutely. And I mean, Stephen Covey, who, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, and lots of writing over the course of his distinguished career. But one of the things that struck me as a young person when I read that book was seek to understand before you seek to be understood. And that's powerful. If I pause and I think, okay, tell me what's going on. I need to understand why you're struggling with this task or this assignment or whatever, as opposed to me like, listen, I told you what to do. Like, okay, tell me what's going on. What have you tried? What didn't work? Let me understand. And then, way back, there was a scientist, and his name just escaped me, but back in sort of the era of the Enlightenment, and he said, read not to believe or disbelieve, but rather to weigh and compare. Where did that go, right? That's the heart of inquiry, is weigh and compare, be discerning, stop and think, ask others, what do you think about this? I mean, a lot of the things I try before I do them, I'm racing off to our staff and saying, hey, this is this weird thing I'm thinking about. What do you think we should do? We'll massage on it. And sometimes we're just like, that's just a bad idea. They'll go, that's just a bad idea. And I'm like, yeah, now that I've seen all your viewpoints, you're right. It is a bad idea. We're not ready for this. Or we come up with a better model, but we do it because we're willing to get in there and beat on it a little bit and not get out of sorts because the idea, the concept, the product, the service is being morphed into something better than what I started with.
Don't you think that kind of takes you into leading with love, like in business? I mean, I think a lot of times, like, I've got a Christian faith, you do too. I feel like when we're dealing with people, with products, with every customer, like, I think a lot of it goes back to leading with love. Because some folks are going to look at that and say that you're turning soft.
We're commanded and told the greatest of these is love. This was not a suggestion. We're told this is the greatest. I think about definition of gentleness. And for a lot of, especially men, we hear that word gentle and we think, oh, soft, pliant, not tough enough to finish, right? And I grew up in a little bit of, I did grow up in the cowboy culture, right? So like cowboy up, right? What do you mean? And yet when you look at the definition, gentleness is strength under control. And as a man in this world, I am commanded to be strong, but I'm also commanded to have that under control. And when I do that, then I'm gentle. And gentle doesn't mean that we aren't going to have hard conversations. It means I'm going to come to that conversation focused on the problem while loving you as my peer, colleague, student, friend, maybe even my competitor, maybe even my enemy. I think about every great coach I ever had and every coach I've watched, every great business person I've watched who had not only success financially, but had legacy and impact where you could see it spreading across people.
Sure.
They all led with love. It might have been expressed in different ways. If you don't come from a huggy family, love doesn't have to be we're all in a group hug, right? Because, I'm still a John Wayne fan. But I think you're right. Without it, we're left at the end. We can all look back. There was probably something we wanted to achieve when we were kids. Maybe it might have been in sports. It might have been in FFA or 4-H, whatever. And we finally get it, right? We get the prize. and it's a trophy or a plaque or whatever it is. And then the next morning we wake up and we're like, why don't I feel different? Why don't I feel fulfilled? It's because I was after a worldly prize, and worldly prizes don't sustain. But
That's
love,
exactly why you hear from folks that have sold businesses or, have got immense wealth and how they are struggling to find their purpose. And you're sitting here looking at like you've got 20, 30, 40 or $50 million now. You should be happy. You should be doing great things. But I think we all have to have that purpose in everything we do.
yes, sir. Absolutely. Love is not soft. Love's hard. Actually, when you make that decision, I'm going to continue to lean into love. You better be ready for a gritty experience because it ain't easy.
That's true. That's very true. We have a lot of topics about burnout, especially in the ag community. I mean, you've been in the cowboy culture, whether it's farming, ranching. What's the one thing that everybody says is just go work harder. And I think a lot of times we see men and women do that for 30, 40 years and they hit that level of burnout. How do we teach work ethic and have that balance between work ethic and hitting that burnout phase?
One of the things that I think about a lot is it balance? And when I think about balance, I think about having my arms out and somebody's piling, tasks in this hand and I start to do this. So to balance it, I put more tasks over here and I just keep adding, right? And I'm never fully, it's kind of like those old beam scales, right? They never really fully stopped. You finally could kind of get like, it looks pretty good. I think that's the weight. But there was always a little motion, right? And you weren't fully stable. And I've never been able to balance. And it might be because I'm just not enough of an athlete, but I just can't balance. What I can do is blend.
Sure.
And over time, like when I used to try to balance, I was disappointing myself, disappointing others all the time because and part of it was I also didn't have the discipline to say no effectively to enough things. So that was part of it. But blend is the key to me, is how do I blend this? And it's part of it is in that for me, and how do I sustain is one, I've got to have a couple of accountability partners. I need coaches. I'm not necessarily talking about paid executive coach, although that is helpful. And I would strongly recommend that to anybody who is kind of at that stage of their career where like kind of getting rejuvenated and having somebody walk you through your stuff. But I just need a couple of accountability partners who will just call me out when I need to be called out and will also encourage me and convict me to step back from things and to say, why are you hanging on to that? Why do you think you have to do that? Have you looked around? You got this smart staff. They're all talented. Most of them all of them more talented than you. You're clinging to things. Let it go, man. Let it go. And the other one I think that we haven't done very well is, and maybe it's a silly analogy, but the Knights of the Round Table, right? There was a brotherhood. And I think anybody in business needs a group. It's kind of like small group or a Bible study, right? You've got to have a group that you get together with occasionally and you sit back and you're like, okay, and I do this with entrepreneurs for one of the funds that I sit on an investment committee for. Once a year, we get them all together and we have a closed door session. I go in and I'm like, you can talk about whatever you want. I'll facilitate the conversation. When we walk out of here, it's 100% private.
You bet.
And those guys, they just lay the stuff out. And it's usually not about business. It might be, but it's about all these other things in their lives. Like, I'm trying to be a good dad, I'm trying to be a good husband, and trying to be a good founder, and I don't know how to do it all. There's this sort of brotherhood conversation where people are saying to each other, hey, try this, or dude, I've been there. I know exactly how you feel right now.
That's exactly. We have a brotherhood call every other week. We'll get together as a group, and that's kind of, it's not really about business. It's what's going on in life. Like, how can we help sharpen you, make you feel fulfilled and on your path? Because there are so many things that pull us in life, and it's the family, it's the kids, it's the finances, it's the whatever it may be that's hammered on you. It could be as simple as your faith. Like, we've had a lot of faith conversations. Like, I was raised this way, and I'm reading this and I'm conflicted. Things like that. I think we have to have that, where there's a non-judgmental environment, and we're all there to help build each other up.
Yeah, the campfire's a powerful symbol. And we watched in our program, we had a couple of young, really talented, really, really, really bright young women who said, look, we think we need to explore why there's not more launches occurring out of this organization with women founders. And what we learned, and something I didn't know anything about, was that imposter syndrome was a big deal for young women in being founders of companies. And so we found resources and actually a coach and a team that helped build a culture where our women in our organization have a concept. It's called Brave Conversations, where they interact with each other, never to solve each other's problems, but to be a place where you can just put it on the table and ask for support as you need it. It has created a wave of companies and relationships that are truly beautiful to watch, because they said, look, we need to support each other. Everything from retreats to those calls like you're talking about. As an ag man, I would say this, right? We don't want to appear weak. This is not about weakness. This is about strength. If you've got the guts and the courage to go to that, you are one strong cat now. You are a cat daddy. So take your stuff to your brothers and let them carry that burden with you, because there's only one whoever's created to carry the burden for all of us.
Well, I think there's misnomer in agriculture, that yeah, you carry that burden, and you end up being the grumpy old farmer or rancher that has got all this baggage and nobody knows. Let's deal with this. Let's unpack it now so that you're on a growth trajectory. And like you said, it doesn't matter if you're farming, ranching, or you've got a business. If you're 78 and you're still the dictator of your operation, that's probably not a good thing. It's not good for the kids that are now in their 50s that are trying to take over the operation, are going to be left with your mess. That is a conversation that really needs to be had across the plains from Canada to Mexico. That is a huge issue.
Yeah, and it's an issue of identity, because we get so caught up in what we do is our identity, and that isn't the lasting piece of it. I mean, our identity comes from our capacity for community, our capacity to grow and nurture others. If we can get past those sort of surface, and certainly our work matters, but there's something on the other side of that, and there's something deeper than that. And work driven by purpose has real value. Work driven just because we don't know what else to do creates just dust. It takes a little bit of just raw courage to, say to another guy, hey, will you help me carry this load a little bit and let me carry some of yours?
Let's shift gears here. Lightning round. Tom, this is going to get good. What's something you've changed your mind about lately?
That a family business success doesn't necessarily mean the next generation taking over.
It's a good one. What's one trait every entrepreneur needs more than talent?
Faith.
Ooh, getting deep. The best cattle you've ever owned?
My champion steer when I was about 12 years old that won the carcass contest too. 980-pound Hereford steer.
There we go. Colorado or Nebraska when it comes to home?
Oh, man, that's unfair. Bloom where you're planted. Bloom where you're planted. I love them both.
Yeah.
And I'll probably end up in Wyoming or Idaho.
All right. Finish this sentence. Agriculture doesn't need more blank. It needs more blank.
Doesn't need more production. It needs more excellence.
I love it. Tom, I appreciate you. You didn't just give us the highlight reel. I mean, you gave us something solid to chew on. Whether you're 22 and you're dreaming or you're 52 and you're stuck, I hope that this episode, it gives you the permission to go ahead and start. Where can folks learn more about what you guys are building at Engler?
The very best way to get a sense of who we are is to come to our website, englerjourney.com. And I'm going to share my email, tfield2@unl.edu. We'd be delighted to share resources, ideas, thoughts. If you're ever in this part of the world, we'd love to host you. You got young people that would benefit from hanging out with us. We'd love to meet them. And again, to your point, just start. Aspire is the heart of it all. It's a dream with action. And dreaming's easy, aspiring's hard, but you were made for hard.
Absolutely. And guys, you can catch them on Instagram at Engler_UNL. Follow along. It's a really neat story. They're doing some really great things, and I think we're going to see some of the leaders in entrepreneurship and business come out of right here in Nebraska. If you've ever felt stuck, tired, or like you're waiting on the perfect timing, this is the episode for you.